On World News tonight, the Yugoslav leader Slobodan Milosevic is handed over to the International War Crimes Tribunal. A federal appeals court says Microsoft is a monopoly. The battle with government goes on. The government says hospitals must admit their mistakes publicly or lose their accreditation. And in recognition of Jack Lemmon, 50 years in Hollywood, some of the unforgettable roles.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with an event that many people in many places thought might never come. The former dictator of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milosevic, who epitomized violence and aggression in the former Yugoslavia for so many years, has been handed over by his own government to an international war crimes tribunal. The U.S. fought a war against Mr. Milosevic. He helped to bring his country to its knees. It may well have been the prospect of getting no international aid that nudged the new government to give him up. We'll go to The Hague in just a moment, to the prison where Mr. Milosevic is going to be held. But first, getting the dictator out of Belgrade. Here is ABC's Bob Woodruff.
When Milosevic supporters heard the news that the former president was being sent to The Hague, they grew angrier by the minute, then turned on the press, including ABC's car. They smashed windows and tried to get at the camera crew. The driver was able to get away with no one seriously hurt. Opponents of Milosevic are happy to see him gone.
I think it is great and it was time for it to be done, and it's just so exciting to be here at this moment.
The War Crimes Tribunal has a lot to deal with in Milosevic's case. The specific charges include ordering the massacre of hundreds of ethnic Albanians in at least 8 villages in Kosovo, forcing 740,000 others to flee their country, and ordering the destruction of their homes and villages.
He needs to be held accountable for the crimes against humanity that were committed under his command.
Serbian police announced today that at this mass grave near Belgrade, they have discovered 36 bodies of Kosovar Albanians, including 10 children. War crimes investigators believe it could be an important link between the killing in Kosovo and Milosevic himself. For now, the charges are limited to the war in Kosovo, but prosecutors are also investigating Milosevic's role in the Croatian and Bosnian wars and could bring more charges at a later date. Bob Woodruff, ABC News, London.
Now let's go to The Hague, where Mr. Milosevic, as we said, is going to be held. ABC's Jim Wooten is there. Jim, first of all, how did they get him there?
Well, we're not really sure how they got him from the Belgrade prison to a helicopter, but that helicopter flew him to Tuzla, which is ironically a city in northern Bosnia. And from there he was flown here to The Hague, or is en route to The Hague. We're not actually sure, on a Royal Air Force, a British plane. We're told that he will be inside this prison by 9 o'clock New York time.
What happens to him when he gets there?
Well, he'll have actually a much better time of it than he did in the Belgrade prison. His cell is larger. It's 10 by 20. He has a satellite TV, a coffee maker. He gets to roam around at will for 12 hours a day and gets to go outside if he wants to for an hour every day. But this is the end of the line for the time being for Mr. Milosevic.
When does the trial actually begin?
It may be delayed for quite some time, Peter, because of, as Bob Woodruff was pointing out, the tribunal investigators are looking at crimes in Croatia and in Bosnia, as well as the Kosovo crimes with which he's charged.
Thank you, Jim. Jim Wooten in The Hague tonight. He'll also have some contact with his family, a phone call of about 7 minutes every day. There'll be more about all this when Mr. Milosevic is firmly ensconced in prison later this evening on Nightline. Now, in the other big news today, there's been another major event in the struggle between the government and the giant Microsoft company. Today, a federal appeals court has vacated an earlier judge's ruling that the company be broken up. But the court did say that a new judge will have to decide on a remedy because Microsoft is still an illegal monopoly. The company's troubles are not over by any means. ABC's Betsy Stark is here. So what we have is a decision in a case that hasn't ended by any means.
No, and you might call it a split decision, Peter. This was a decision in which both the government and Microsoft claimed victory. Both sides lost some battles, and a lot was left up in the air. The appeals court unanimously ruled that for now, there will be no breakup of the company that made Bill Gates the world's richest man. At a news conference today, Gates said a cloud had been lifted.
We feel very good about what the court has written here.
The court said Microsoft did not violate antitrust law by making its internet browser part of the Windows operating system. But the appeals court did rule Microsoft is a monopoly, and it acted illegally to maintain its monopoly.
The appellate court really confirmed the core of our case, which is that Microsoft acted anti-competitively, anti-consumer, to stifle innovation and competition.
The court criticized the company for strong-arming PC makers into using Microsoft products exclusively.
I'm pleased to say that the court unanimously found that Microsoft engaged in unlawful conduct to maintain its dominant position in the computer operating systems.
The judges saved some of their harshest language for trial judge Thomas Penfield Jackson, who, they said, held secret interviews with members of the media and made numerous offensive comments about Microsoft officials, giving rise to an appearance of partiality. Some of those comments, one likening Bill Gates to Napoleon, appeared after the trial in a book by journalist Ken Oletta.
I think it's important to parse that and note that though they rebuked him for talking to reporters and for some of the comments he made about the case publicly, they sustained his judgment, his basic judgment in this trial.
A new trial judge will now decide on an appropriate penalty for Microsoft. Bill Gates said today Microsoft would like to settle this case out of court, and there may be other lawsuits. Now that the appeals court has said the company abused its monopoly power, competitors may sue. Finally, Microsoft could face legal challenges over its new XP operating system due out this fall. XP ties a number of new Microsoft products to the operating system, and Peter, it has competitors once again crying foul, antitrust.
And very briefly, how do the markets react to all this?
Well, Microsoft is one of the companies in the Dow. The market saw this as good news for Microsoft and helped create a large rally today on Wall Street.
Okay, many thanks, Betsy Stark. Then looking ahead, a new judge will get the Microsoft case. There may well be new suits, as Betsy says, from Microsoft competitors, and the war is not over by any means. Now, some items in the national briefing today. Two important rulings from the Supreme Court. The court ruled that Massachusetts cannot forbid tobacco billboards near playgrounds and schools. The justices said it was a violation of free speech. The court also ruled the government cannot put immigrants in jail indefinitely just because it has no place to send them. Non-citizens who commit felonies are supposed to be deported, but sometimes the countries they come from will not take them back. The court says that doesn't mean they should languish in detention. Another company shedding workers to improve profits, John Deere, which makes agricultural equipment, of course, is cutting 1,250 jobs, or 8% of its workforce. The United American Nurses Union, which represents 100,000 nurses, has voted unanimously to affiliate with the AFL-CIO. The nurses want better pay, and they want better working conditions. And in California's Los Padres National Forest, the first condor hatched in the wild, or not in captivity at least, in 17 years has died. Biologists believe that a female condor caring for the chick may have killed it mistakenly. Overseas again, the Secretary of State Colin Powell has been in both Israel and in the Palestinian-administered territories today. The Secretary of State has been meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister and with the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. He's trying to use American influence to get these two sides closer together. ABC's Martha Raddatz is in Jerusalem. Does the Secretary think he made any progress?
Well, he did make some progress, Peter. He does have some influence over here. He got a timeline, but the hardest part about this timeline might be passing the first marker. Secretary Powell made the timeline announcement after a late-night meeting with Israel's Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. A 7-day period of quiet, followed by a 6-week cooling-off period before confidence-building measures, such as freezing Jewish settlements, began.
This is a package, it's a plan, it will work if we can get the violence ended.
Powell had urged Sharon to be more realistic in defining the terms of a ceasefire, but Ariel Sharon still insists that ending the violence must mean complete quiet. And how will that be measured?
But when there is a mortar shell, everyone here when there is a roadside bomb, everyone sees.
Powell said tonight that ultimately it will be up to the parties to decide when the ceasefire has taken hold. Powell got a promise earlier in the day from Chairman Arafat.
We will do all our best, all our efforts, and we are sure that with your support, we will succeed.
Now, just a couple of hours after Arafat made that statement, a Jewish settler was killed in the West Bank. Arafat called that an isolated incident. But, Peter, I do not believe this will be the first day of any ceasefire.
Many thanks, Martha. Mr. Arafat may not control all of his people. In the overseas briefing today, a court in France has recommended that James Kopp be extradited to the U.S., where he's wanted for murdering a doctor who performed abortions. Kopp was captured in France, but the French wouldn't return him until U.S. prosecutors said they would not seek the death penalty. There was a bomb in Madrid today at a busy intersection. It was hidden in a backpack. 16 people were injured, including a Spanish general who may have been the principal target. Once again, Spanish authorities suspect extremist Basques who want an independent homeland, but who have little support for the violence they commit. The Bush administration is negotiating a major arms sale with Poland. 60 top-of-the-line F-16 fighters and one of the U.S. military's most sophisticated smart bomb systems. In the Philippines today, there was a cloud of poison gas over the Mayon volcano. On the side of the volcano, landslides still threatened the farmers if they returned to their fields. 40,000 people were evacuated when the volcano erupted 4 days ago. When we come back, the fierce debate over a patient's Bill of Rights. Will it really improve health care? Hospitals are going to be required to tell their patients about medical mistakes. We'll take a closer look at how a hospital can operate. And remembering Jack Lemmon. So much pleasure for so many people.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Gateway.
On Capitol Hill today, the Senate is still debating the very contentious issue of a patient's Bill of Rights. We're told they may stay in town over the Independence Day recess. This bill will have an enormous effect on the power that patients have when dealing with their HMOs if it ever gets passed. We're joined by ABC's Linda Douglas, who's on Capitol Hill. Tell us where the parties are at this point and what the plans are, Linda.
Well, first of all, each side does claim that the Patient's Bill of Rights will fundamentally change the way that consumers are treated by their HMOs. Both Democrats and Republicans are promising new rights for more than 100 million consumers who are in HMOs. Among them, access to the emergency room without prior approval from the HMO, greater access to specialists, access to prescription drugs beyond those on the HMO's approved list, an independent appeals board that can overrule an HMO's decision. Some of those reforms have already been implemented in many states, but the Democrats are fighting for another fundamental change, giving patients the right to sue their HMO for withholding treatment.
I think we're going to see a significant change in behavior among the health plans.
The HMO industry agrees consumers would notice a change. HMOs will raise their rates.
It drives up the costs of physician, hospital, and health plan malpractice premiums. That all gets played into the costs that consumers pay ultimately.
But a government analysis predicts insurance rates would only go up 4%. In states where patients can sue, few do. However, the insurance companies, the HMOs, are saying now that they will add on an extra fee just in case if the law passes, Peter.
Many thanks, Linda Douglas on Capitol Hill. We're going to stay with health care. When we come back, hospitals will soon be required to report their own mistakes, and we'll take a closer look at a hospital that already does. It is going to get tougher for hospitals to make mistakes and not reveal them. As of this weekend, the Nonprofit Commission, which oversees accreditation for hospitals, will require them to inform patients when they have been the victim of a medical error. We're going to take a closer look at this because the government's Institute of Medicine estimates that almost 100,000 people die every year as the result of medical mistakes. ABC's John McKenzie takes a look tonight at a veterans hospital which already operates by very tough standards.
Medical mistakes happen in every hospital, but at this VA center in Lexington, Kentucky, errors are quickly and publicly admitted.
We're a healthcare organization that is supposed to be there to serve patients. It doesn't serve patients to hide from our mistakes.
The medical center here began a revolutionary change in the way it responds to suspicious injury or death after suffering 2 costly lawsuits in the mid-1980s. Now it launches its own investigation, questioning doctors and nurses and reviewing files. When a serious error has been identified, hospital administrators promptly telephone the patient or next of kin, admitting the mistake and offering to review the case in detail. They provide the necessary claim forms, even help families file them. They encourage the families to get a lawyer and offer them prompt compensation for their loss.
Compensation is always negotiable, and we do find from experience that it helps to reduce anger, and the complainants seem to go away very much more satisfied.
The hospital gave Sandy Reynolds' father the wrong medication, resulting in his death.
I was ready for a huge fight. No matter what it took, I was going to make this hospital pay. And whenever they apologize and they admit that they did wrong, what are you going to fight for?
Being open and honest about medical mistakes has not only been good for the hospital's image, it's been good for its bottom line. It's settling more claims for much less money. The average settlement at the VA hospital in Lexington, $15,000, compared to the VA national average of $98,000 per claim. No one knows if the full disclosure policy has resulted in fewer mistakes, but it's gone a long way, helping patients and families who suffer the effects of those mistakes. John McKenzie, ABC News, New York.
Closer look at the new standards. Some other brief items in the medical file tonight. The Centers for Disease Control says that elderly blacks are far less likely to get flu shots than elderly whites. 69% of older whites had a flu shot in 1999 and only 48% of elderly blacks, which of course makes them more susceptible. A study in the American Journal of Public Health finds that young men who jog regularly build strong bones and may be less likely to develop osteoporosis later in life. The Surgeon General has released a carefully worded report on sexuality. Dr. David Satcher says communities must encourage abstinence as well as birth control, and he said the country needs to be less nervous about openly discussing sex. And the Canadian government has approved human tests of a temporary male contraceptive. It is a removable implant which may temporarily be as effective as a vasectomy. When we come back, one of America's favorite actors.
I feel naked. I feel like everybody's staring at me. With those legs, are you crazy? Now, come on.
Night. Finally this evening, Jack Lemmon. He gave moviegoers such enormous pleasure when he died last night of complications from cancer at 76. There was such a career to consider. He was versatile, funny, serious, and enduring. Here's ABC's Brian Rooney.
Both in comedy and drama, he played the hapless guy who couldn't quite control his life. But within that character, Jack Lemmon had a mile of range. Here he was dressed in women's clothes in Some Like It Hot.
Look at that! Look how she moves. That's just like Jell-O on springs.
The alcoholic in Days of Wine and Roses.
You know why I've been fired from 5 jobs in 4 years, and it's not politics. Like we always say, it's not office politics or jealousy or any of that stuff. It's booze. It's booze.
Lemmon made his first movie in 1954.
Well, I make movies, only they're about real things. People, places, and things. This one.
Only 1 year later, he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor as Ensign Pulver in Mr. Roberts.
I'm gonna pack that thing solid with that stuff they use to blow up bridges. Fulminator mercury. And boy, on the night of Doug's birthday, I'm gonna throw that under the old man's bunk and bam, boy!
Nominated for Best Actor 7 times, he won for a lesser-known movie, Save the Tiger. Not his signature performance as the fussy bachelor opposite Walter Matthau's slob in The Odd Couple.
30, you were gonna be here at 7 o'clock. Help me with the hors d'oeuvres, and at 7:30 they get here and we have the drinks, cocktails. At 8 o'clock we're gonna eat dinner. Well, it's now 8 o'clock and my dinner's finished. The meatloaf is done.
Lemmon was born in Massachusetts, graduated from Harvard, and enjoyed success from stage to television and the screen. He was a little like the manic men he played. and he thought being an actor was the best.
You have a chance to make people think. And when you make them think, you can move them and make them think in a way that they would not have thought had they not seen that performance.
I will absolve anyone, everyone, of everything. I just want my boy back.
I just cannot believe a man would deliberately falsify the records of a nuclear reactor. My God.
Don't look so sad because I'm going to die, Mitch. Everybody's going to die, even you.
Jack Lemmon was the everyman of the screen. Brian Rooney, ABC News, Hollywood.
A lot of movies are going to be rented in the next few days. That's our report on World News tonight. Tomorrow on World News, we're going to do a report on the ironclad Civil War battleship, the Monitor. They're raising it. I'm Peter Jennings. Have a good evening and good night.